All right, well, we are really excited to be here, and thank you guys all for coming. We're really excited to talk about how women play in the sports space, particularly in the betting space. Not so much how do we make women bet more, but how do we make it a space where women want to be and feel comfortable and feel like their needs are met. We don't have that much time, so we thought we would just kick it off right away. Riona, we wanted to start with you. Before we start specifically talking about betting, we want to talk more about how your marketing experience at Betty and at French Connection and elsewhere, how is marketing to women different, and how is marketing to millennials different?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, head of marketing at Betty. We're a female-focused online casino. And my background is in the fashion, CPG, beauty space. And I think like the most important insight there about marketing to women is like really understanding them. Like we have different pain points, we have different needs, and that informs like not only your product, but your brand and your messaging so much. So when we started Betty and when we built Betty, like we took foundational insight from women players, from, women who had interacted with other either like sports betting platforms or land-based casinos, and we took that insight and we built a product around it. So for example, things like, a lot of women are the primary caregivers, so sometimes they don't have time on a Sunday afternoon to sit down and like watch a game for a bunch of hours. We have a different relationship with money. Like there's some shame and guilt involved sometimes in like our downtime and our fun. So we've created an environment where like, to log in and play, you don't need to bet a ton of money. Like that's yours. Like it relieves some of that guilt. So, I think it's really important also to have female voices in the room when you're talking about speaking to women and marketing to women. Like we know what we want, and I think we've all heard the like really funny story about the NASA scientists who like were sending one woman up to space and they send like 200 tampons for 2 days. And it's like, I just think that there's a real opportunity to involve women in this space more. And it starts with knowing them, understanding them, and like including them.
Yeah. Great. Heather, moving into betting specifically more, what do you think the barriers to entry are for women in sports betting today? How is your venue Shake, Gaming with Friends, creating a new category in betting that speaks to the female audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Heather Brooks-Karatz. I'm the founder of Shake. But I've been in the sports and entertainment industry for 20 years. I started on the legal side, moved over to the business side, and there was always this consistent theme and perspective at the different stops along the way for me, which is I always had this lens on how do we expand the audience of eyeballs for leagues, teams, venues. And whether that was at LAFC or Angel City or the NFL, NHL, it was always about, okay, there's plenty of people who are talking about how do we extract more dollars from the existing fans. And I was always really focused on how do we get more fans? Yeah. And when sports betting came on board, I was like, okay, this is cool, but this is probably speaking to a hardcore bettor, right? Or it's probably speaking to a hardcore fan. And I started thinking about, how can we create something that actually is a tool to bring in those eyeballs? Because that's what a lot of leagues and teams want, right? They want to use this as a tool to expand their audience. So that was the genesis of Shake. Shake is gaming with friends powered by brands. And we actually sit outside of the regulatory betting framework because we're free to play. And we created a product that is, we just sort of recognize that in the industry that there's a very high barrier to entry. And that includes a huge subset of women, but it's really about the larger segment of sports and entertainment fans out there. There's a lot of folks who want to engage, not just in sports, but also betting or gaming activities on culture. And so Shake is a platform where you bet with friends. It's very simple, social, and accessible. So there's no cash being exchanged. There's no odds. There's no parlays. There's not that lingo that someone may not know what that means, right? So again, minimizing the barriers to entry. And then you get brand prizes. So in addition to training a consumer on how to participate in this ecosystem, we're training brands. And we're collecting data for brands. And so for a lot of the existing platforms, it's not brand safe for a brand to participate on it. But for us, this is a way of training a new audience, engaging with a new audience, and enabling a brand to build a gamification product that helps them build an authentic community.
I really like the idea of making betting more social, because I think that's where, for me, fantasy started, and I think that's what really makes it fun. Val, love to move to you a little bit more and hear more about Betting Ladies. I know it's built to create a space and content for women in betting. What are the unique preferences and motivations of female sports bettors compared to their male counterparts, and what can operators do to tailor their offerings?
So I would say that women are more gregarious in general when we talk about life in general and sports betting. For us, betting is not a solitary endeavor, while for men kind of is. And if you look at differences between male and female, the biggest difference is that we are better sports bettors. Like, it's not me saying it, it's actually data. So if you look at, there was a study done by 888 in 2021 where they analyzed the bettors pool in New Jersey. And they basically came out with the result that women have an ROI on bets of 19% versus men, the equal counterpart has an ROI of minus 4.3. So we are probably more careful with bankroll management. But it's also true that if you're an operator, men do bet twice as much in terms of money than women do. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword if you're an operator. It's also true that we are growing. In 2021, there were 4.6 million sportsbook handles by women. And if you are selling data to bet, women tend to buy those data more than men. The comparison is 20% to 15%. So if you're in the business of selling data, women is definitely your market.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Why do women do so much better when they gamble? For you or for anyone? Is it because they use data? What's the difference?
I would like to say generally superiority, but no, I'm kidding. I think it's simply a matter that we don't probably do crazy parlays, and we base our evaluation on data. Contrary to common belief, we do like data, and we are managing money bankroll in a better way. I think
Riona,
it's simply down to that.
Riona, you like you wanted to say something too on that.
Yeah, like one of the things that I've learned from talking to so many of our players are like, because we have a lot of male players as well, but like women, I think that I've found are just like less risky when it comes to what they're willing to bet or what they're willing to, put up. So it seems like we maybe make some more like educated decisions based on versus a like gut feeling on something.
Yeah. Interesting. Karina, I wanted to talk a little bit about women, but also other diverse groups. I know your organization, We Are Drafted, focuses on Latina sports culture. How do sportsbooks become more welcoming for women and also for Latinas and Latinos in the space?
Yeah, so I co-founded Drafted really with the intention to bring representation, visibility, and access to Latinas in sports culture. And so when we're looking at Latinas in specific, so my expertise is Latina, so I'm going to speak to this, but we can take this model and probably replicate it for other diverse groups. But it really comes down to anything that you're trying to convince somebody to do, it comes down to trust, right? And so how do you create that trust? You create that trust just like you would with any other relationship. It's a long-term longevity marketing and talking to them, right? And not just talking to them, but talking to them authentically and through their in-cultural lens. And how can you do that? It's by bringing people who understand that. And so for us, like when we started, we really focused on coming down to the ground because Latinas, particularly in sports, have never been spoken to. And so how can we create something for them when we don't understand them? And so it started first by just understanding them and making them know that we are for them and by them. And we are very vocal about that. And therefore that created that trust. Now we have this audience that believes in us, that feels safe, that feels seen. And when you have that, you can really do a lot, And so for us, it's about understanding those cultural nuances, putting them into our marketing and putting them into our voice and our tone and being very, very methodical and careful about that because that's really where people will know when you're not being inauthentic. And it's very easily shown, especially for markets that have been underserved. They know when it's forced. Latinas are not, I think before we used to always say that we're going to speak to the Latin market by translating in Spanish. But the reality is most of Latinas are young and they're English dominant. They're not the demographic like my mother and my grandmother who spoke Spanish primarily in the home. We are diverse, we're multicultural. And so these are all nuances that are really important to take into consideration when you're entering any market. So that's our approach and how we look at it.
Karina, if I could ask a follow-up question,
Yeah.
Anyone's welcome to answer. Do you find that women and Latinas in particular, one or both, bet on different types of sports or make different types of bets than others might?
Yeah, so for us, we're really focused on understanding her behavior as a consumer. And I think it's really about finding places that she feels represented and seen. And so I think naturally women's sports have more of that representation because there are Latinas, there are women, they connect to those stories. And I think women's sports teams do a better job of that storytelling and building that trust. And so, I think we're really starting to see a little bit more interest in that, but I think time will tell.
Yep. So Riona, I wanted to go back to you. How do you build a product for women? What do women want in an online sports betting product? And anyone's welcome to chime in. But
Yeah, great question. I think it goes back to a lot of like what you were just saying, like the authenticity part is huge for women. Like women know, I think, inherently from brands when they're not like speaking to their needs. So in terms of building an online product that's catered to women. I can't specifically speak to the sports industry, but in an online casino, it's integrating things like, trust, transparency. We do that through customer service. Like you always speak to a real live human. It is most of the time a woman, and you can tell. So it's building that personalized, trusting experience. I think sometimes you see brands in other spaces try to just like create female-friendly branding through like visuals, and like that does not work. It has to be inherently in the product, i.e. like, we only have slots on Betty. Like there aren't, like there's no sports betting, there are no table games, women don't have the time. And I think another thing, going back to my point about like the trust, is that we have built a platform where you have instant, if not like very fast withdrawals. Like you can get your money back at any time, which plays into this whole like risk adverse guilt aspect of it. So there's a bunch of other things too that are inherent in the platform, but it's just like keeping that like female psyche top of mind in everything that you do.
I'll add to that too. So Shake is not built just for women, right? Shake is built for the broader entertainment and sports fan. And the idea is that really creates a social environment. So there's in-app chatting. You can participate with your friends when you go out to dinner and create a new contest. So that's very, very social oriented. And we also have a functionality where you'll bet not just on sports outcomes, but also on entertainment outcomes. So if you want to bet on the Grammys, the Oscars, The Bachelor, that's also really fun. And that's another way to bring people into the platform, get them to understand what you can do on a platform like this, and then maybe also bet on the NFL or bet on the NBA. On top of that, there's brand pricing, right? So you might see traditional brand pricing that is gift card to Nike or gift card to Fanatics or experience at Topgolf. You might see things that kind of sit in the middle, like dinner on DoorDash, dinner on Postmates, that appeal to a lot of people. Yeah. Or you might see $5 to Sephora. Right? And that creates an opportunity for brands that can connect with this female audience that they want to desperately connect to, and sort of, we collect data as well, so get data on this audience. And also, allow that consumer to get something of value through an activity they wouldn't have normally have done.
Yeah, I wanted to follow back up with you, Heather, a little bit more about, I know we have experience first in entertainment and with brands. How do brands play in this space? How do brands interact with women and betting? Or how should they?
Yeah, so it's interesting to think about how women, you were just talking about how women aren't betting as much, but let's not forget that women control 80% of the purchasing power in the home. Okay, so if you're someone who advertises in sports, for example, you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, but how are you getting to the female eyeballs? Right? You have a primarily male audience, but you need to somehow convert that into sales, right? So the sports industry needs more tools to get those brand dollars in front of a female audience so that they can help convert to sales with that purchasing power. And that's really important to keep creating outlets for that to happen. Additionally, you have brands who are desperate for gamification and community building tools. Right? I love thinking about Amazon as an example. They have 170 million Prime members and almost no community.
Yeah, it's true.
Think about that, right? So how do they build community? It's really hard for them because they're going to some agency for a media spend where they're getting the traditional media spend outlets where they're going to spend a lot of money. Well, what if a fraction of those dollars went towards building community? How can we create more tools to do that? And I think everyone up here is thinking about that so that we can get to that 80% purchasing power that we all control.
Val, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how do you educate women more about betting, but find the right balance? You don't want to be the league that pinkifies and shrinks everything. How do you educate women without being condescending and doing it in the right way?
You do it with women. Yes, that first of all, so that it feels authentic. It is authentic. All our content, for example, is created, and all the hosts, everyone is a woman in Betting Ladies, except our CEO, because someone has to do the paperwork, and it feels authentic because it's a simple, accessible knowledge that get distributed by women to women, and hopefully we kind of eliminate the barrier at the entry, which is mainly the intimidation aspect that sports betting is traditionally male dominated. And I agree with you, because women have been historically casino players, slot machine players, but now we're seeing the transition into sports betting. Let's not forget that 47% of NFL watchers are women. And of course, we love Taylor Swift, and we thank her for the kind push that she gave us with sports betting as well. If you look at BetMGM data, they said that there was a 51% increase in bets placed on the Super Bowl this year from last year, which is incredible. So the trend is showing us that women are getting more and more interested in sports betting. And I agree also with your comment about the community. The community aspect is a big component of how you welcome women into sports betting.
Yeah, Karina, we can even talk more about this. I mean, for me, when I just look at the odds, I like to think I'm reasonably good at math, but I like C plus 140, and I probably could figure it out, but it doesn't intrinsically speak to me about what does that mean if I gamble $100, what does that mean? How do you think that women and Latinas react to that? How do we remove the barriers so it feels more natural for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking about Latinas and women of color specifically, we have to remember, and we have to go all the way down to the origin, that there is a massive pay gap. So Latinas make $57 cents to the dollar. So already we, as Latinas, are, there is already a barrier for us to have that excess money to be able to spend leisurely. And so when we think about that, we have to understand that our consumer behavior and our spending behavior might be more of that scarcity mindset, especially coming from women and women of color who might have generational money wounds, who might come from immigrant families. Like, these are all things that come down to that decision maker who might be a Latina who you're targeting. And so that's why when I go back to thinking about how do we get more of them, it's by having people in rooms that understand that. So that's step one. But once we're there, we have to make it accessible to her. We have to make it feel as if she's part of something. And by doing that, it all goes down to the marketing. It's the communication. It's the ability to make her feel safe and knowing that she feels welcomed in the world of sports. She feels welcome to be able to spend that extra dollar, that extra few dollars. And it all comes down to understanding her and making her feel safe in sports. And that takes a layer of different things. And for us, it's really important that people who understand those nuances around women of color, and diverse backgrounds can be in those decision-making places to be able to trickle down to her.
Do you guys, any of you, see anything that operators or leagues are doing well to attract women bettors? You're also welcome to comment on things that you think aren't going well, but in an effort to be positive, what do you think? What have you seen that's good, that's progress?
I mean, if it's true that the whole NFL, like Taylor Swift, Kelsey, conspiracy theory is true, like from an outsider's perspective, I'm like, that was gold if they orchestrated that.
I place a bet on that.
Did you?
First of all, I believe it's true.
Yeah.
I think it's totally true.
And then I place a bet on the social bet work, talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, that they will stay together until the end of regular season, which means I won the bet. But I think there is a change.
Yeah.
If you look, for example, it was, I think, Charlotte Tilbury that was the first makeup brand that sponsored an F1 car. I thought that was incredible. First of all, the car looks amazing. And also, it's the first time.
Yep.
Female CEO, female driver, F1. Yep. I think that's progress. And there are some operators that are doing a good job at partnering, supporting women's sports and companies that offer services to women bettors. Do we need to mention names? Or
It's your choice.
fine. I mean, Flutter is doing a good job, I think, like of all the companies. Of course, if you're targeting them, I don't think they're really targeting them, because if you look, for example, some of the recent advertising, if I have a famous actor with a lion at his back, it doesn't really scream, women, you're welcome. So I will say that they are not targeting them. It's not that they're doing a bad job.
Yeah, I can add a couple. I mean, going off of the NFL, I think they're doing a fantastic job with women. Look at the Diana Flores commercial that went live on Super Bowl last year, and now they're continuously adding and investing in women and women's sports. So I think that they're doing a fantastic job in doing that and really being the leaders in changing that, and now it's going to be an Olympic sport in 2028. So there's a lot of opportunity there from the men's side. I think on the women's side, I'm from LA, so I'm an Angel City fan, but I think what they've done is an amazing job of tapping into their community and understanding who their fans are between a 20-mile radius. And it's likely going to be Latinas and women and diverse women and queer women. And they've been able to do that really well. And from the experience when you walk in, from the colors, from even the merch collaborations that they do, and all of those things are the things that people think of when then they are willing to spend that extra money in betting, because they feel like they're a part of that culture and they're thought of from the get.
Yes, and if you talk about Angel City, and I agree, they as a brand, they're doing a phenomenal job, so kudos to them. They even have a farmers market for the fans in the community every Sunday, I suppose. And they represent 38.7% of all the revenues of female soccer in the US. So that's a big share. So if you do it well, it works. Yeah. So women money, if we're talking about a business opportunity, is there.
I love these Angel City plugs.
Yeah.
Yes.
These are good.
Yes.
I'd be curious though, like with women's leagues, what are the leagues doing themselves to say we should invest in betting or gaming to help encourage our audience and our fans to?
They are doing a lot. I mean, if you look at the WNBA, they are everywhere. They are fighting the fight to be at the same level of the NBA. It's tough because, media, if there is anyone in the audience, should cover women's sport, should talk to athletes, because if you look, for example, soccer, apart from Megan Rapinoe, who do we know that has emerged from, the abyss of women's sports? So they're doing something. It takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about out in the hallway, the PWHL. They had their largest game ever in Toronto a few weeks ago. I went with a bunch of girlfriends, and there's a buzz. So I feel like things are potentially starting to build, right?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what works with women. We are social people, and watch parties and gregarious activities, and then you layer the betting on top.
I think a good lesson coming out of all that is, I've obviously been in this business a long time, and I remember when we started Angel City, the valuations were very different at the time than the way our clubs are being sold at today, and sort of the roadmap wasn't yet built. But it was a moment of saying, if we create a vision up here, and we build for that vision, and we create a media platform that enables women to live it, build up to that vision, we will come. Fans will come. Eyeballs will come, right? And that's now being proven. I think the same thing should be said about the betting gaming industry, right? Let's not treat women as this sort of subclass or second category over here. Let's make sure we're building products and platforms that live up to the expectations that the female community wants, and we will show up.
Yeah, and spend money.
Last question for anyone. There are prominent, great examples. Amy Howe at FanDuel's one. How do we get more female leadership? There aren't that many female leaders in the leagues doing this or at the operators. What would it take for change to happen?
That's a $1 million question, because it's not just sports betting or gambling in general. It's everywhere.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's up to us. Let's crack the glass ceiling, and expect more. I think we need to come out of the lower expectation for women type of mentality and the demand for more. And the men in the industry, we need your help as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts within leadership and making sure that we're hiring. But I also think it starts with media and making sure that we're amplifying the leaders that are women in sports to make sure younger girls see versions of themselves and can aspire to that.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.